Before we get started, I just want to let you know that I had to use my backup audio for this video because my SD card for my primary microphone melted when I placed it in my computer. That being said, the audio is legible throughout, just a little scratchy and annoying at times, so I do apologize, but please don't let that keep you from watching it. Without further ado, here we go. Hello everyone, Love Therapy Animals here. It's been a while since I posted about my alcohol journey and my sobriety journey. I do apologize about that. Things have been really crazy and hectic here. I've got major changes coming into my life here real soon. And to be fair, I thought I was done with that. Anyway, I'll explain why it's been so long as I share my recent reflections on alcohol, anxiety, relapse, and recovery. I think people benefit from experience and wisdom. I can tell you this. My wife actually grew up in an alcohol-dependent household. She tried to warn me many times what was going on with me. Could have saved myself a whole lot of trouble if I'd have paid attention and listened to her much sooner. So take that for what it's worth. Let's get into it. But first, check out my new hair. So it's still super crazy, but after 20 months of being bald, I think it's starting out pretty good here. This is 4 or 5 months of growth at this point. That being said, about a month out from being completely out of the military, there will be a video where I kind of talk about my experience, what it's like to make a career, kind of like a review video of the United States Air Force. So if you're curious about that, hit the subscribe button. You'll see that sometime in September. All right, so I recently had a relapse into drinking alcohol. Wanted to share my experience to help others, warn them, especially if they might be going down the same path that I was going. So if you haven't followed my journey so far, check one of these cards somewhere going on around here. See where I started, kind of see where I was at before going into this video, because I'm not sure it would make a lot of sense at that point. Anyway, things started when I had the idea to kind of try normal alcohol consumption after a period of time. In my case, I said 6 months minimum being sober. The hope being that I broke my dependence and I would find myself in a position where I can enjoy alcohol normally. One of my favorite pastimes has always been, have a scotch, listen to records. So that was kind of the goal. So after that point, after the 6 months, I decided, let's give a glass of wine a try, which I did. Everything went fine. I went a few days with that single glass of wine, no big deal. So I was like, okay, let's have 2 glasses of wine. Down the road, did the same thing. Everything was fine. So later on, break out the scotch, pour myself a double, put on some music, started to drink, not even halfway into it, those old urges and, that incredibly strong desire to drink more hit me. I didn't spend much time worried about it. I gave into it. Sure enough, found myself 7, 8 drinks later, completely wasted, like riding a bike. I was back to my old self. So fast forward a couple of days. Had really insane cravings. I gave into them, drank more. This kept on for a few weeks, obviously started snowballing into a bigger problem. So something I didn't tell you about yet is before and during this period of time, someone I love got into a major accident, was severely injured, and found myself over a period of 2 months being their caretaker because they were bedridden and bound to a wheelchair. Now, before I go any further, they're okay now. They're over 90% now, back on their feet. But this is kind of why I haven't posted in a while, and kind of some of the background to how I got where I'm at. This accident also kicked in some major anxieties that I have. In fact, my primary anxiety. I'm not going to go into it in this video as far as what that's all about, because that's not the purpose of this. But suffice it to say, I have a really bad anxiety that was controlled for well over a year, managed very well. Once this accident happened, found myself in a position where, that worry kicks in, the anxiety kicks in, the paranoia and panic attacks and all the stuff that goes along with strong anxiety. Because of the period of time I was in with the major accident and caring for somebody, I found myself not talking about it, not working through it. I didn't want to burden my loved one with my problems at the time. They were going through major recovery themselves. So it just wasn't in a good place for quite a while. So now we fast forward a little bit as my relapse is kind of building up, building momentum. Found myself one night in drunken stupor thinking this is a good time to unload everything, get it off my chest. Super shocking when it came out, all wrong. It was, I was a bit mean. I was a bit selfish. These weren't the things I was truly feeling. It's not the way I wanted to communicate it. All this is because I was unable to communicate properly while I was in an inebriated state. After this event and terrible evening, I spent the next day reflecting very heavily on where I was, where I'd been, and I spent some time getting things put back into perspective for myself. I realized that this relapse was obviously from my own poor choices. I put this sort of time frame on something that realistically I don't have control of. We don't have control of. I ignored my anxieties. I failed to communicate for a period of time. It was probably inevitable that that was going to happen. Given the circumstances and my own messed up brain. But after this reflection, I did find myself recommitting to sobriety, recommitting to the person that I have become, and not backstepping into that other person that I was. Later that same day, sat down with my loved ones, um, discussed soberly what was going on in my head, what I intended, and I felt heard. And that being said, I was able to listen. Felt like I heard some things that I needed to hear as well. Got things back to a place of understanding and mutual respect, and that was really good for us. After this, I was feeling way better than I have in quite some time. So, what has been and is the plan to move forward with sobriety? Well, so a little story. Long before I started this journey, way back when, I had made a purchase of bulk cases of alcohol because it was really cheap at the time. And all through my journey, they had sat in my storage untouched, hadn't been a problem. During the relapse, they became a bit of a problem because I knew they were there, they were accessible. Found myself, prior to this being like, hey, I don't want to throw that out. I don't want to feel like I'm throwing money down the drain. But after reassessing things, thinking about my life, the non-financial costs of alcohol, weren't worth it. So I ditched it all. It's all gone. I dumped all of it. Felt really good doing it. Felt therapeutic, even like giving the finger to alcohol. It was again very therapeutic. So here we are. I'm about 2 weeks since that event. The relapse lasted less than a month. Certainly wasn't healthy. Wasn't good for me, but got control of it pretty fast. And I wanted to share my takeaways. I talked earlier about this idea of drinking normally again after I felt that the dependence was broken. I do feel like I broke the dependence, which is really good. However, the binge drinking part of my brain is still very much intact. It did not take much scotch whatsoever to kick that right back into high gear. And I think they're two separate, distinct things. They both lead to the same thing and absolutely contribute to each other. But the reality is, yeah, I've come to the realization I may never be able to enjoy alcohol normally again. And I think I'm finally at a place where I'm content with that. So that's probably one of the most important things I took away. The next thing, we all have our own struggles, anxiety, depression, other mental health conditions, got shit going on, perfectly normal. But when you're going through a tough time, that's not the time to shut down about that stuff. I felt like I was protecting someone by not going into my own problems, but the reality was all I was doing was letting that stuff build up and find itself at a point where, it boiled over and was an unhealthy way of expressing it. Take that for what it's worth. Hanging on to that stuff, had it gone on too much longer, could easily led me down the same road I was before, dependent on alcohol to feel better and to ignore things. It's not the person that I want to be. I would hope that's not the person you want to be. There are healthy ways of dealing with these sorts of problems. I know because I've successfully done it so many times. Alcohol is never a solution to that, and bottling that stuff up, puts you in a place where you're vulnerable to falling into that trap again, or at least I was. So, also, communication is still king with relationships. You can't protect people from how you're feeling. All you can do is articulate it in a constructive and effective way. And I think it's important to do that because you and your loved one both deserve the respect that comes with talking candidly, openly, and honestly, because that helps build your bonds. That doesn't necessarily break them apart. Doesn't have the lasting effects that bottling something up would have, and then blowing up about it later. It's not worth doing. So the big thing that I took from that is be deliberate and thoughtful about my communication and express the things that I need to express when it happens. Truth be told, we're not guaranteed tomorrows. So, one of my big philosophies is living in the moment. Alcohol doesn't necessarily let you do that, doesn't let me do that. And bottling up emotions or problems or things like that, That's not living in the moment either. You're thinking, hey, I'll take care of this down the road, but you never know when down the road ends. That's not meant to be a downer, but I find that it's much more enjoyable to live and spend time with people when we're not burdened by these things. So using alcohol leads to ignoring that aspect, and it's just not a good way of dealing with it, period. And finally, for those of you that may find yourself in a similar position or worry about finding yourself in that position, a couple things that I can tell you regarding withdrawals this time. I only had cravings really strong for actually a couple of days, instead of the weeks that happened when I first quit drinking. I think a big part of that is due to the fact that I got a hold of it a lot faster. I didn't let it continue too much longer, less than a month of relapse, and it wasn't near as bad as it was before. Those things helped. At 2 weeks, I have no cravings again. I'm feeling very strong. I've got my shit together. It doesn't feel near as hard or as much of a struggle as it was before. And I think another part of that is, just that mentality is finally realizing, hey, maybe alcohol will never be part of my life. And I'm truly okay with that, because being a drunk is not the way I want to be. And finding myself back where I was a year ago, where, I'm on the verge of divorce and, was probably likely to meet an early demise, just wasn't worth it. And it makes it much easier to put this stuff down. I don't know, how long that'll hold. Maybe something will change down the road, but for now, I'm feeling confident. Cravings are already gone. Feeling like I'm in a much healthier place. So thank you for listening to my ramblings. As always, feel free to leave questions or talk about your own experience in the comments below. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share this video and my other videos with people you think might need to hear it, or might help them understand what they're going through somebody else's eyes and perspective. As always, I've got a bunch of resources for folks suffering from dependence in the links below. In addition to the resources, just remember that quitting alcohol on your own can be quite dangerous. You should do that under the care of a doctor. Withdrawals can be quite serious and, in fact, deadly. I think that's all I wanted to cover in this video. Remember to love each other, and just as importantly, love yourself. LTA out.